If you've ever had your heart broken in a grocery store aisle, next to a display of butternut squash and overpriced granola, then I know exactly what that moment feels like. It's not the betrayal that hits first. It's the familiarity, that slow, soft recognition of someone who knows your face, someone who smiles at you like they've seen you cry. Only, you've never met them before. Not really. That's how I met Dr. Lee Winston. Or rather, that's how she thought she already knew me. It was a random Tuesday. I had just gotten out of work early. I'm a high school guidance counselor, which sounds more emotionally fulfilling than it really is, and decided to grab groceries before the evening rush. I was standing in the seasonal section at Trader Joe's, deliberating between pumpkin ravioli and the spinach kind, when a woman approached me from the side with a casual smile. "Olivia, right?" I blinked. "Sorry?" She tilted her head. "Oh, my mistake. You look exactly like one of my clients' wives." Something in my stomach dropped. She was wearing no makeup, jeans, and a fleece half-zip, hair in a practical bun. But she had the kind of presence you feel before you hear. Therapist energy. Calm, self-assured, and slightly apologetic. Like she was always 5 seconds away from handing you tissues and saying, "That sounds really difficult." "No worries," I said with a polite smile, ready to move on. But she kept talking. "Sorry again. I've just seen pictures. I do a lot of solo and couples therapy. Your doppelganger's husband has been coming in for months now. Says he's trying to fix things before the baby comes." My chest tightened. It was the baby part that did it. I wasn't pregnant, but I was married. And my name is Olivia. And my husband, Ethan, had started seeing a therapist on his own 5 months ago, just after we started having serious problems. I knew her name. He told me once, offhandedly, as if it didn't matter. Dr. Lee Winston. My voice came out cracked. "Wait, what's your name?" She looked confused. "Lee?" The pumpkin ravioli slipped from my hand and hit the floor. Ethan and I met 7 years ago at a fundraiser for a youth literacy nonprofit. He was the photographer. I was the woman making awkward conversation over paper cups of Pinot Noir. We got married 3 years ago in a micro-wedding in upstate New York, just us and a few friends, surrounded by trees and mist and promises we thought we meant. Back then, we were that couple everyone called stable. Quiet, predictable, healthy. But healthy can rot under the surface. Quiet can be silence. Predictable can be avoidance. The first cracks showed last winter, after we had our second miscarriage. He changed. At first, I thought he was just grieving differently than I was. Men are taught to shut down, to fix instead of feel. But it was more than that. He became withdrawn, defensive, obsessed with work. We stopped talking after dinner. We stopped touching. We stopped trying. Then one night he came home and said, "I think I want to start therapy. Just for me. I need to figure some stuff out." I was relieved, hopeful even. But months went by and he never shared a word about it. I didn't push. I thought, at least he's doing the work. Until I met the therapist who mistook me for someone else. Until I found out, I wasn't the only woman in his story. I didn't confront him that night. Instead, I did what any emotionally fried, slightly paranoid, mildly tech-savvy woman would do. I went home and dug. And Ethan made it far too easy. His Google Calendar was shared with me. It was how we used to coordinate date nights and rent payments. I hadn't checked it in months. But when I opened it, I saw standing appointments labeled LW, Tues 7 p.m., LW, Sat 10 a.m., Alt weeks. Twice a week? I thought he said once. Then I searched his phone history. I knew his passcode. He never changed it. He'd been texting someone named Jamie, Cafe, constantly. It had its own text thread separate from his group chats. No emojis, but full sentences. Timed between sessions. I tapped on one message. "Jamie, Cafe. What did Lee say this time? Did she tell you to be honest yet?" "Ethan. She said I need to stop lying, that she won't keep covering for me." Covering for what? My heart hammered in my ears. I checked our shared iPad's notes app. He used to jot down grocery lists, passwords, photo shoot concepts. There was a locked folder titled Session Recaps. I used Touch ID. It opened. The entries were short, clinical, like therapy homework. April 3rd. Lee says I have to separate guilt from shame. That guilt is about what I did. Shame is about who I am. I don't know which one is worse. April 17th. She asked if I really believe Olivia deserves the whole truth. I said yes. I think I lied. May 2nd, she said if I'm building a life with Jamie, I have to end the performance. That I can't keep living in the in-between. May 16th, Olivia mentioned trying again for a baby. I froze. Lee says I need to choose fatherhood or freedom. I read those words in our bedroom, sitting beside the lamp we picked out at IKEA, on the bed where we conceived and lost 2 children. My fingertips went cold. I scrolled through every entry. There was no misunderstanding, no metaphor, no way to spin this as miscommunication. Ethan had been talking about 2 women in therapy, me and Jamie, and his therapist knew. I didn't sleep that night. I laid awake listening to the white noise machine Ethan insisted on using. I stared at the ceiling, the wall, his back. He slept like the dead, peaceful. I wanted to punch him in the ribs. I wanted to scream into his skull. I wanted to pull the truth out of his throat like a splinter. But instead, I did nothing. I took screenshots of every text, every session note. I emailed them to myself, backed them up in the cloud, printed hard copies and stored them in my desk drawer at work. At 5:43 a.m., while he was still snoring, I made an appointment with a divorce attorney. Then I waited. I didn't confront Ethan the next morning either. I made him coffee, toasted his bagel, let him kiss my cheek on the way out the door, even though it made my skin crawl. Then I sat in our kitchen, my kitchen, if we're being honest, and read through the email my attorney sent at 7:12 a.m. sharp. Her name was Corinne Vega. I found her through a late-night Reddit thread titled, "Divorced Women Who Woke Up. What Lawyer Saved You?" Corinne had 3 badges on her site: Certified in Family Law, Trauma-Informed Legal Care, and Top Women in Law, 2024. But what really sold me was the first line of her bio. When your husband thinks you're too dumb to check the printer queue, call me. She got me. Her response was short, efficient, and kind. Olivia, so sorry you're in this situation. Your prep work is already ahead of most. First step, don't say a word to him. Yet. Schedule a consult. Bring documentation. We'll build from there. Corinne. I booked the first available Friday, 4 days away. That week stretched like a nightmare on a loop. Fake smiles, useless conversations. I kept track of every time Ethan lied to me. Monday. I'll be late. Jamie needs help setting up a shoot. Wednesday. Therapy was rough. Lee's pushing me hard, but it's good. Thursday. You're so patient with me, Liv. I don't know how I got so lucky. He told that last one in bed. After he kissed me. After I let him touch me like nothing was broken. I turned my face into the pillow so he couldn't see me cry. The only person I confided in was my best friend, Samira. We've been friends since college, RA assignments on the same floor. She's a pediatric nurse, blunt as hell, loyal as death, and the only person in the world I knew wouldn't say, "Are you sure you're not just imagining it?" I called her the night before the consult. I told her everything. Samira's voice dropped into a deadly quiet. He has another woman, his therapist knows, and instead of confronting you, she mistook you for her? Yeah. Girl, that's not just betrayal. That's psychological warfare. She didn't do it on purpose, I whispered. She didn't know who I was. Olivia, that woman hears secrets for a living. She knew enough to fake it better. And he, Ethan, he's just using therapy as cover. A place to rehearse lies until they sound healed. I couldn't say anything. I just started crying. Samira stayed on the line until I fell asleep. Corinne's office was on the 18th floor of a glass building downtown. The waiting room smelled like lavender and ink. The receptionist offered me water and said, "Take a breath. You're not the first and won't be the, last." When Corinne stepped into the room, she looked like she'd just stepped off a courtroom drama. Perfect posture, slate blazer, a red notebook under her arm. No small talk. "You have proof?" she asked as we sat. I opened my folder. Printed texts, session recaps, photos of his calendar, bank statements with odd ATM withdrawals near a coffee shop downtown. Corinne flipped through every page without blinking. "I've seen men hide affairs in burner phones, shell companies, even church bulletins," she said, "but rarely in therapy sessions. That's a new flavor of audacity." I cracked a sad laugh. She leaned in. "Now, here's the real question. Do you want revenge, protection, or a clean exit?" I didn't even hesitate. I want him to hurt, but legally. Corinne smiled for the first time. Good. Then we don't scream. We document. We time our strike. That weekend, Ethan left for what he said was a photography retreat. 3 days, 2 nights, cabin-style Airbnb. The location matched Jamie's Instagram story. I knew because I watched it through my burner account, an old student's mom account I'd once followed for PTA updates. Jamie had posted a blurry boomerang of wine glasses clinking near a fire pit. A man's wrist in the corner. I knew that wrist. She captioned it. He says the stars look better when he's here. Timestamp. Friday, 8:14 p.m. Ethan texted me at 8:15 p.m. Phone's dying. Love you. Be home Sunday night. Stay warm. I took a screenshot. Added it to the folder. Then I poured myself wine and emailed Corinne. He's with her, right now. Her reply came 10 minutes later. Noted, let's prepare to file next week. In the meantime, be boring. Be silent. Be smart. On Sunday, Ethan walked through the door carrying a bag of fresh sourdough and a new sweater. He kissed my head. Asked me how my weekend was. I told him I watched The Crown, did laundry, and meal prepped. He said, "You're amazing. I wish I was more like you." I looked him dead in the eye and said, "Me too." He didn't flinch. By Wednesday, we were in Corinne's office again. This time, for the filing strategy. "We'll serve him in 2 weeks," she said. "We'll need to decide where. At home, at work, or therapy?" I blinked. "You mean at his therapist's office?" Corinne nodded slowly. "Dramatic, yes, but poetic. And legally sound, as long as we're outside. I'll hire a process server." Something in my chest flared. Hope? Spite? Maybe both. "I want that," I said. I signed the documents. The next 10 days passed like a funeral. Not loud grief, just quiet rot. I watched him slip further into the role of devoted husband. He brought home flowers, made dinner, kissed my forehead, rubbed my back. Maybe he sensed the end. Or maybe he was performing for himself now, pretending he was still the good guy in someone's story. But not mine. Not anymore. On the morning of the planned service, I packed a small overnight bag, left it in my trunk, and called out sick from work. The process server's name was Marcus. He was kind, ex-military, and looked like the kind of man who knew how to stay invisible until it mattered. We parked near the office building, across from Dr. Lee Winston's therapy suite. Ethan's session started at 10 a.m. At 10:46 a.m., Ethan stepped outside. He was holding a to-go coffee and smiling down at his phone. Probably texting Jamie. Marcus stepped forward. "Ethan Ward?" Ethan blinked. "Yeah?" "You've been served." He handed him the envelope and walked away. Ethan stood frozen on the sidewalk, mouth open. Then he looked around and saw me. I was sitting in the passenger seat of my car, window down. He walked over. "What? What is this?" I didn't flinch. "It's the truth, Ethan. In legal form." He shook his head. "Olivia, no. This is a mistake. We're good now. Things are better. I'm in therapy. With her," I said. His face paled. "I know everything. Lee, Jamie, the cabin, the baby." "What baby?" That's when it clicked. He hadn't told Jamie yet. She was pregnant, and he didn't know. But Dr. Lee did, because Jamie told her. Because Ethan probably sat in that room bragging about balancing both lives, while his therapist played along. He stared at me. "What do you mean, baby?" I rolled up the window. I didn't go home that night. I checked into a modest Airbnb on the other side of the city, one of those guest house studios tucked behind someone's main home, with ivy along the fence and a keypad on the gate. It had everything I needed: clean sheets, a lock on the door, and enough distance from the life I was burning to the ground. By 8:12 p.m., my phone had 14 missed calls, all from Ethan. By 10:00 p.m., it had 4 voicemails and 23 texts. One of them just said, "Ethan, who told you about the baby?" I didn't respond. At 10:47 p.m., I got a text from an unknown number. "Jamie. You blindsided him. I hope you're proud of that. You humiliated both of us." That confirmed it. Jamie was pregnant, and now she knew I knew. But more importantly, Ethan had gone to her, immediately. Instead of calling me to apologize or explain, he'd gone running to his mistress and spilled everything. Even the fact that I knew about her pregnancy, which he hadn't heard from either of us. That said it all. And yet, I still couldn't sleep. I laid there with the TV humming low, half watching reruns of The Office, staring at the popcorn ceiling. I kept thinking about that word Jamie used. Humiliated. Not betrayed. Not heartbroken. Not sorry. Humiliated. Like I'd ruined her image. Like she was the victim. And honestly, that made me more furious than anything Ethan ever did. The next morning, I had coffee with Samira. She met me at a local diner, straight off her night shift. She wore navy scrubs, hair in a puff, no makeup, and still looked like the woman I'd trust to pull me out of a fire. She slid into the booth, grabbed a menu, and said, "All right, are we going scorched earth?" I blinked. I already filed. I know, but are we going scorched? I hesitated. What would that look like? Samira leaned in. It would look like you sending those therapy notes to the state licensing board. Like leaving anonymous Google reviews for Lee Winston's practice. Like finding every photography client Ethan's booked and letting them know what he's done. I don't want to blow up his business. She shrugged. Then we play smarter, subtle, surgical, like women do. She pulled out her phone and opened notes. Step 1, she said, typing. You make peace with the fact that he's not sorry he hurt you. He's sorry he got caught. Step 2, you use that. He's off balance. He'll try to win back control. That means you've got leverage. I nodded slowly. And step 3, she said. You leave him with one thing he never expected. Silence. Ethan finally stopped calling after 3 days. On day 4, I got a formal letter from his lawyer requesting a meeting. It was worded carefully, politely, like we were just business partners with a scheduling conflict. Corinne handled it. She told them we'd meet under one condition. He disclosed his financials first. A week later, his spreadsheet arrived. That's when I saw it. A hidden tab labeled Wedding 2025. I opened it and felt my stomach twist. He was planning to marry Jamie. The budget included venue deposits, catering estimates, and a line item for a photography/video crew. Ironic, really. The projected date? June 21st, 2025. Just 9 months after our divorce would be finalized. 9 months. Enough time to plan a wedding, or carry a child to term. I stared at that tab for an hour. I wasn't sad. I wasn't angry. I was done. We met in mediation the following week. Ethan walked in looking thinner, paler, like someone who hadn't been sleeping. Good. Corinne and I sat across from him and his lawyer in a glass-walled conference room. The air was stiff with politeness. The kind that smells like sweat and fake niceties. Ethan avoided my eyes the entire time. At one point, he cleared his throat. I just want to say, I never meant to hurt you. I tilted my head. Then why did you do it twice a week? His lawyer blanched. Ethan flinched. Therapy was supposed to help me figure things out. It did, I said. It helped you figure out how to rehearse lies. He finally looked at me, and for the first time I saw something real in his face. Not guilt. Not shame. Just panic. Because I wasn't crying. I wasn't begging. I wasn't his anymore. I was free. 3 weeks later, I was officially moved out. I took what I needed. My books, my desk, the wedding china my grandmother gave me. I left the coffee table we fought over, the mattress we cried on, the shelf he built me after our first miscarriage. Let Jamie enjoy that haunted furniture. I also took the iPad, and on my last night in the Airbnb, I found something in the Notes app that stopped me cold. A new entry, dated 2 days after I served him. It read, July 2nd, Lee says it's not too late, that I need to show Olivia my growth. But I think what I really need is to be seen. I've never felt seen by her. Not like I do with Jamie. But then, why do I still dream of Olivia asking me to stay? I read it 3 times. Then I deleted it. If you had told me a year ago that I'd feel peace after a betrayal this deep, I would have laughed in your face. Or cried. Or both. But that's what healing does. It surprises you. Quietly. Slowly. Not with fireworks or Instagram quotes or champagne toasts. But with ordinary moments. Like walking through a Target and not thinking about whether Ethan would have judged me for buying a throw pillow I didn't need. Or cooking for one and not apologizing for how much garlic I used. Or waking up to silence and not feeling dread, but relief. It's strange how much of yourself you lose trying to keep someone else from leaving, and even stranger how quickly pieces start returning once they're gone. After the divorce finalized, I moved into a one-bedroom apartment near the school where I work. It had creaky floors, an ancient stove, and windows that overlooked an alley filled with cats and potted plants. But it was mine. All mine. Samira helped me paint the walls on a Sunday with 2000s R&B playing and Chinese takeout between coats. She also brought a housewarming gift, one of those wooden signs that read, "My heartbreak made space for my backbone." "Too corny?" she asked. "No," I said, choking up. "It's perfect." The part I didn't expect was how many people noticed the change in me. Colleagues, students, even the woman who manages the front desk at the school. "You're lighter," she said one morning, handing me a delivery. It was a bouquet. From no one. There was no name, no card, just white tulips and eucalyptus and a small sticky note that read, "I'm sorry. For everything. LW." I froze. Dr. Lee Winston. I hadn't thought about her in weeks, but suddenly I was back in that Trader Joe's aisle, holding pumpkin ravioli in confusion, as a woman stared at me like she knew my soul. I never reached out. Never responded. But I didn't throw the flowers away either. That fall, Ethan sent one final message. It came through on a rainy Friday night, while I was grading college essays and sipping herbal tea like someone who actually likes their own company. It was a long text. "Olivia, I know I don't deserve a reply. I've thought about reaching out so many times, but everything I want to say sounds self-serving. And maybe it is. I don't know how to explain what I did, except to say that I thought love had to feel like worship. And you never worshipped me. You just saw me. That scared me more than I could admit. I see it now. I see what I had. What I lost. Jamie had the baby. A girl. We named her June. I'm trying to be better. For her. For myself. I hope you're happy. Ethan." I stared at the message for 10 minutes. My fingers hovered over the screen, itching to type, to say something. Instead, I locked my phone, placed it face down, and went back to grading. One of the essays began with this line. The hardest choices I've made weren't between right and wrong. They were between who I was and who I wanted to be. 3 days later, I got an email. Subject line: "Professional inquiry, counseling collaboration?" It was from Dr. Lee Winston. She wrote, "Olivia, I understand if this is unwelcome. I want to formally apologize, not just for the Trader Joe's mistake, but for the unethical entanglement that followed. I never should have continued seeing Ethan after realizing who you were. I violated a boundary I now regret deeply. I've reported myself to the licensing board and suspended my practice temporarily. I'm seeking supervision and reparative training. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted to offer something that might serve you. I'm organizing a virtual workshop for women navigating post-infidelity recovery. If you ever feel like contributing your story, as a guest speaker or anonymously, I would be honored to hold space for it. Either way, thank you for reminding me that silence can be powerful, but truth even more so. Lee." I didn't reply. Not at first. I let the email sit in my inbox for a week. Then one night, after reading a post on RR True Off My Chest about a woman who caught her fiancé cheating with her therapist, I reopened Lee's message. And I started typing. "Lee, I've been thinking about silence a lot lately. I used to believe that healing meant forgiveness, that moving on meant releasing all anger. But what I've learned is that sometimes healing means remembering. Clearly. Without letting it rot you. You hurt me, not just by what you did, but by what you allowed. Still, I believe in repair. I'll contribute to the workshop. Not because I owe Ethan anything, but because if my story helps another woman see her own life more clearly, that's worth it. Let me know the details. Olivia." The workshop happened in November. It was a Zoom call with 60 women, all camera off, mic muted, names changed. I read my story aloud. Slowly. Clearly. Just once. At the end, Lee asked, "What would you tell the version of yourself who stayed quiet for so long?" I answered without hesitation. I would tell her this isn't the end of her story. I would tell her she's not crazy, not too emotional, not impossible to love. I would tell her that the truth is not always loud, but it's always worth speaking. And I would tell her, eventually, You will be more than what was done to you. You will become who you choose next. By the time winter rolled around, my apartment felt like a real home. The smell of fresh paint had faded, replaced by cinnamon candles and the quiet hum of the radiator. My mornings became rituals again. Grind coffee, feed the stray cat who'd adopted my fire escape, watch the sunrise hit the window just right. Peace looked small from the outside, but after a year of chaos, those quiet, ordinary moments felt enormous. Still, peace doesn't mean closure. That came later. In a way I never saw coming. It started with a package, a plain brown box, no return label, dropped on my doorstep mid-December, 2 weeks before Christmas. Inside, a hardcover photo book, cream linen cover. No title, just one line embossed in gold on the inside flap. For the woman who taught me how to see. My breath hitched. Ethan. I flipped the page. It wasn't a love letter. Not exactly. It was a portfolio. Photos, black and white portraits, moments of raw humanity. A father holding a newborn. A woman laughing alone in a laundromat. A child feeding pigeons in the rain. Then halfway through, I found a picture that made me stop breathing. It was me, standing on a bridge, mid-laugh, scarf caught in the wind. I remembered that day, 2 years ago, on a trip upstate. We'd been happy then, genuinely. I hadn't even realized he'd taken the shot. Underneath the photo, he'd printed a caption in his handwriting. I didn't know what truth looked like until it left me. I stared at it for a long time. There was no note, no address, no number. Just a small postscript written at the back. You don't owe me forgiveness, but thank you for changing me, even when it broke you. I didn't cry. Not at first. I just closed the book, set it on the table, and sat in silence. Grief and forgiveness are siblings. They look alike in dim light. Sometimes you can't tell which one you're feeling. But that night, I realized it didn't matter. Because both meant I was finally letting go. I lit a candle, poured myself wine, and played the playlist I used to love before my life exploded. Hosier, Florence, Lana. I danced barefoot in my living room until the wine glass shook on the counter, and my body remembered what joy felt like. That was the first night I didn't dream about him. A few months later, I actually saw Ethan again. It was early spring, outside a coffee shop downtown. I was grabbing an oat milk latte before work. He was pushing a stroller. He looked older. His beard had gray in it now. But when he saw me, his face softened in this way that almost made me forget what he'd done. Almost. He approached cautiously. Hey, Olivia. Hey. The baby, June, I assumed, was asleep. Tiny fingers wrapped around a stuffed giraffe. She's beautiful, I said quietly. He smiled. She looks like her mom. There was an awkward pause, the kind that stretches until someone breathes wrong. Finally, he said, You look good. Really good. I am good, I said simply. He nodded. I heard about the workshop, Lee told me. She said you were incredible. I shrugged. She's doing the work. That's all that matters. He sighed, looking down at his daughter. I think about what I did. Every day. I believed him. For once, I really did. But I also knew that remorse doesn't rebuild bridges. It just acknowledges where the fire started. I smiled softly. Good. Then maybe something beautiful came out of it after all. He looked up, confused. I pointed at the stroller. At least one of us got a second chance. Then I turned and walked away. The next chapter of my life didn't start with a man. It started with a microphone. One of my students, a quiet senior named Mariah, invited me to a local storytelling night. She was performing a spoken word piece about her mother's addiction. She was terrified. I promised I'd go. The bar was small, with Edison bulbs and brick walls. The stage was barely a step up from the floor. People clapped between sips of craft beer and nervous laughter. When it was Mariah's turn, she froze, tears in her eyes. I walked up, squeezed her hand, whispered, You've got this. Just tell the truth. She did, and she was breathtaking. Afterward, the host came over and said, You should tell a story sometime. I laughed it off. But later that night, as I washed dishes in my tiny kitchen, I thought about it. What would I say? The next month, I signed up. My story wasn't about Ethan. Not directly. It was about losing yourself trying to save someone else. It was about silence, truth, and rebuilding piece by piece. When I finished, the room went quiet for a moment, and then erupted in applause. I didn't cry. I smiled. For the first time, I felt like my story belonged to me again. 6 months later, I got another email from Lee. Subject line: podcast collaboration proposal. She'd started a podcast called After the Apology. It featured women who turned betrayal into growth. Therapists, survivors, storytellers. She wanted me to be her first full-length guest. I said yes. Recording that episode was surreal. Sitting in a studio, microphone in front of me, headphones on. My voice steady as I said words that used to taste like poison. Lee asked, "If you could speak directly to the woman your ex is with now, what would you say?" I paused for a long time before answering. I'd tell her I hope she never learns the way I did, but if she does, I hope she finds her way out faster, and I hope she never lets someone else's therapy become her trauma. When the episode aired, my inbox flooded. Hundreds of women writing versions of the same thing. Thank you. I thought I was alone. That night, I stood on my balcony, phone buzzing nonstop, and smiled at the city lights. I whispered to myself, "You're not alone anymore." 1 year to the day after I found out about the affair, I took a solo trip. Mendocino, California. The same coastline Ethan once said he'd photograph when life finally slows down. Life had slowed down, just not the way he imagined. I stayed in a cottage overlooking the cliffs. Woke up early. Walked barefoot through fog. Collected sea glass. I didn't check my phone much. One morning, I wrote in my journal, "Healing is not about getting even. Healing is about not wanting to anymore." And that was the moment I realized I was done writing about the pain. It didn't own me anymore. On my last night in Mendocino, I watched the sunset with a cup of tea in hand. My phone buzzed once. It was an Instagram notification. Jamie had tagged me in a story. My heart raced, but when I opened it, it wasn't cruel. It wasn't petty. It was a photo of baby June's tiny hand gripping Jamie's finger. The caption read, "For what it's worth, thank you for the grace you didn't owe me." I stared at it for a long time. Then I smiled. Because somehow, in the wreckage of everything Ethan destroyed, we'd all grown something honest. Different. Whole. Maybe not forgiveness, but understanding. When I got back home, I placed Ethan's photo book on a shelf. Not in the trash, not on display, but somewhere I could reach if I ever wanted to remember how far I'd come. Every scar deserves its place in the story, but not center stage. As I closed the cabinet, my phone buzzed again. This time a message from Lee. "We're starting a nonprofit for women navigating emotional abuse recovery. I'd love for you to be on the board." I laughed out loud. The full circle absurdity of it all. The therapist who once enabled my husband's affair now asking me to help rebuild other women's lives. But that's the thing about growth. It's messy, circular, and sometimes unexpectedly poetic. So I said yes. Now, every time someone asks how I survived it all, I tell them the truth. I didn't. Not the version of me that stayed quiet, or begged, or carried his guilt like it was mine. She didn't survive. But the woman who rose from her, she did. And she's not surviving anymore. She's living. If someone's betrayal became your beginning, what would you have done in my place?